guys, this is Katie Dozier and Colin Moshman for CardsChat.com, and today we have the first video for our course, Become a Winning Poker Player in 30 Days.
The topic of day one is position, which we call the center of every poker story. Katie, why is this the center of every poker story?
Because it's how every poker story that is told by a good player should start. You don't hear someone say, well, I was just with deuces and then I raised. That's not a good story. You know what's a good story, or at least has the beginnings of one, is I raised from the hijack with pocket fours. It is the most important piece of information to give your position.
Absolutely, and we're going to give examples of that in the hands to come. But let's begin with a few fundamentals of position. Katie, pop quiz, what are the poker positions?
The poker positions start with under the gun and then under the gun +1. Then we move to middle position and then to my personal favorite, the low jack. Not always used as a name, but it should be because it's the coolest positional name in poker. Then the hijack, the cutoff, the button, and then the small blind and the big blind.
Wow, A+, already passing, way to go.
I think that it'd be a little scary if I didn't know that at this point when I've been playing for a while, but I'm glad to get any sort of praise, so thank you.
Yes, I think absolutely deserved. And the most important thing after knowing these positions is that pre-flop hand selection depends on position. Poker players love to say it depends, and the hands you play depend on a lot of factors, including the state of the game and your opponents, but the single most important of those factors is position. Absolutely crucial. Now, when you're under the gun, forced to act, you should play very tight. There are 8 people who can fight back against you. They can have a real hand. They can decide if they want to bluff or do whatever. Whereas on the button, you only have 2 players who can fight back. So as you get later and later position, you can play looser and looser.
Yes, and when you're under the gun, of course, you have sometimes literally no information about everyone left to act behind you and what they may hold. Whereas when you're on the button, you know that everyone acting before you had a hand that they decided not to play, potentially.
Yes, absolutely. So now we get to one more important bonus concept before we look at several hand examples, which is not as important. So the main positions we've been talking about are absolute positions. They don't change. But occasionally we also have this idea of relative position, which is where you act relative to a key player who's usually going to be a maniac or someone driving the action. And what you ideally want is going to be for the maniac to act and everyone else to act before you, so you get to be the last one on that street.
So would you say you tend to be the key player at most tables that you're at?
No, I would say that's literally never happened to me, but it's kind of an embarrassing point.
Well, I strive to be the key player in every game I play, personally.
I love it. And we're going to look at an example of that coming into action shortly, but let's go right now and check out a few hand examples. So we have up ICMizer right now, which is a great program we're going to look at in a few different contexts coming ahead. And one thing on their replayer is that you'll see they use slightly different names for the positions. For example, instead of Katie's favorite position, the low jack, they say MP1. So there are going to be different regional variations, so to speak. Different people will sometimes use slightly different names for these positions. So definitely be aware of that if you see it.
And they shouldn't. I just want to put it out there. They should be saying low jack because the low jack is where it's at. Much as I love ICMizer, not cool.
Okay, nice judgmental stance.
Email them right now.
And one thing that you want to do is you want to practice telling poker hands with positions in a nice, accurate way. So here the way we would talk about this hand pre-flop, the way we would tell this story pre-flop is under the gun limps, and then everyone folds to hero on the button. And hero raises.
With 10-9 suited?
Yeah, so raising and folding are both fine. Hero elects to put in the raise. The small blind folds, the big blind folds, and under the gun calls. So that's how we would tell this poker story if we were relaying it to a friend.
Yeah, and it's really important if you want to get help with your hand histories that you are saying it in a way such that people can help you. If you don't give all the information, then you're going to be getting incomplete help.
Absolutely. So, for example, a recreational player would often say something here like, somebody limped before me, then I raise with 10-9 suited, the flop comes. They're not going to express things in a precise way, and that's something we want to work really hard on to practice.
Yeah, and to standardize it and have it be professional in how we say it.
Yes, professionality is going to be the key word of the day.
I am only professional.
You, yes. Katie is always professional. So let's move on to the next hand. And when you're three-handed, one thing that's important is with fewer than 9 players at the table, you're going to keep the blinds the same. So here, of course, Woody in the big blind has posted as 20, here in the small blind. But the remaining positions, you go from button and late positions rather than early positions. So for example, this guy who's raised to 40 is not under the gun, he's the button.
Yeah, and an easier way to think about that perhaps is just what's the most favorable name, so to speak, that your position can have. And so here, technically button is under the gun, but it wouldn't be a true representation of the hand to say under the gun. So you just want to visualize it as though, when you're telling the other person, they can't see it. And so what makes sense here is obviously button over UTG.
Yeah, I mean, he literally has the dealer button in front of him.
That's it. So that's a key point
part of
to
it.
This.
Absolutely. And if we were to add in a fourth player in this hand, that fourth player would also not be under the gun. He would be the cutoff, etc. Now, Katie, I have a riddle for you. Are you ready?
Possibly.
Okay. What is the fewest number of players that can be at the table?
1. And you know when? When I win all the chips. And it's just me, and I'm taking that winner's photo, looking so fly.
Are you also shooting a rap music video?
I think I am, as it turns out. No, but to answer what I believe was the more serious part of your question. 2 for heads-up play.
Exactly. So heads-up play is one-on-one play, super aggressive, fun format we're going to talk about later in this course. And this is going to be the one exception because here the small blind and the button are the same position. And you hear it referred to both ways. So the big blind is always going to be the one posting the larger blind. And in this case, hero is either the small blind or button position, depending on how you like to say it. Yeah. Katie, which do you prefer?
I prefer small blind just because of the fact that, it clearly says you're posting the small blind also in there.
That's a good point.
I think it's a little bit more clear.
Good point. So here we would say small blind limps, big blind shoves, small blind calls, and that's how we would narrate this hand. And now we're going to get to the last hand of the day and today's big quiz question. So hero has getting very good odds. He calls. So this is a correct spot in the big blind. And we check. So the question that I have for you guys is, how would you narrate the flop action? What would you say if you were describing the flop action to a friend? So pause the video, think about that, and see if you get today's big quiz question correctly.
And I think it's only fair, with this being the first quiz question of this series, that you answer one of your own, Colin Moshman.
Okay, fair enough. So the way we would say this, as I think I even started to hint at before I asked the question, but that's cool, is you would say big blind checks, cutoff bets, and button raises. Or, of course, if you're actually the one in the hand you're here, you could say, I check in the big blind, then the cutoff bets and the button raises. So that's how you describe it with the positions. And one other, go back to the bonus concept, is if the cutoff is a very aggressive player, we have the best possible relative position here because we assume he's normally going to bet after raising pre-flop. We see what the button does and we get to act last. So that's a nice little bonus in this hand.
And I would have to say you have passed your first quiz. You got the bonus question correct as well. It's almost like you rigged this in your favor.
It is almost like that, yes. So we're going to be getting to more advanced concepts, of course, but position, super important, and I think a great way to start off this course.
Yeah, definitely important to have the framework to talk about hands before we get into the exciting work during the course of really talking about the hands themselves.
Yes. So tomorrow we're going to continue with day 2 on aggression and the benefits of aggression, another fun topic. Thanks very much, guys, for doing this course, starting it off with day 1 in the video. This has been Colin Moshman and Katie Dozier for CardsChat.com and the Become a Winning Poker Player in 30 Days course.